Today we're talking about the cutest Cory that you guys have ever seen, and we're talking about Corydoras pygmaeus, otherwise known as the Pygmy Cory. So before we get too far into it, what is going on, everybody? I am Rob with flipaquatics.com. I'm actually the owner here at Flipaquatics, and I wanted to share a little bit about the Pygmy Cory care guide, basically, and also give you guys just kind of like a sneak peek into how we take care of it, what you need to know before getting one for your aquarium. So let's first just look at these guys and just talk about them. So these are a dwarf species of Corydoras. So there's a couple other dwarf species. We'll talk about that later on in the video. But these ones, scientific name Corydoras pygmaeus. They're often referred to as the Pygmy Cory catfish. They are tiny. They literally get to about an inch in size. So that's the biggest one that I've ever seen. These are ones that we currently just got in. We got these in last week or the week before. They're about 3/4 of an inch at most. They're super cute. They have like a thin black line that goes the whole length of their body. These guys are so peaceful, non-aggressive whatsoever. So they do really good in community setups. For water parameters, what we're doing is we use a 50-50 tap water to RO water mix. We remineralize it with shrimple GH+. I won't get into that because we have specific tap water that we're able to do that. For you guys at home, here are the parameters that we're actually keeping these in. So as far as temperature, they're a little cooler than I would like because we're kind of dealing with some heating issues in our fish room, but this tank probably sits about 72 degrees. TDS, we keep it about 150. GH, usually, and for all of you that don't know, GH is general hardness. So our general hardness is about 6 to 8, just depending on, when you measure it, because it goes down over time. So 6 to 8. KH, we usually keep between 3 and 4. So I'm a big proponent of 2-to-1 ratio, 2 GH for every 1 KH. And we do all of our GH and KH adding through Shrimple. That is our own brand. It's one that we designed so that we could use it for these type of things. It is marketed as a shrimp remineralizer, but we use it for all of our fish as well. And then as far as pH goes, we keep these guys at about 7.3, 7.2, and it might fluctuate. When we first import these guys, they come in, we put them in 100% RO water. It helps them transition so the pH is pretty low. The reason that we keep these guys at about a 7.3 pH is we want to be right in that sweet spot. Most people that just use tap water, their pH is going to fall anywhere between like 7 pH and 7.6. But if you want to keep these guys in a species only aquarium, then a lot of people keep their pH around like 6.5. And so we try to be right in the middle so that these guys are as hardy as possible, so they can either go lower or go higher, whichever way your tank is set up for them. And that's just a little bit about the parameters. We're just using a very basic sponge filter, nothing crazy. We have a whole row of these guys. I think right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tanks of them. And so it is one that we sell a lot of, so we always try to have them in stock and healthy. Now these guys do come in somewhat rough. They're hit or miss whether they come in good. And so we like quarantine them for at least 2 weeks and all that stuff. And I'll talk about that later on in the video. I want to talk about their tank setup first. So let's go right into that now. So this is a tank that we've had a little bit longer. We've had this tank for about a month and a half. This is one of the ones that we're currently selling out of. So even though we say we hold them for 14 days, we usually tend to hold them a lot longer than that. And as far as a perfect setup, so we're keeping these guys in a 20-gallon long. We got a sponge filter. We don't have any substrate or anything like that. We're keeping about, when we import these, we put about 150 in a 20-gallon tank. Now, I don't recommend that at all. We're just doing it for the short term, and that's what works for us. For you guys, as far as tank size, you could do a 5-gallon tank. Again, these fish only get to about 3/4 of an inch, so they get up to an inch, but most of them are gonna be about 3/4 of an inch. So they stay pretty small. So you could put a group of them in a 5-gallon tank, although for stability reasons, I always talk about this, the more water volume, the more stable the parameters are gonna be. So I highly recommend a 10-gallon tank or more. Now, as far as the amount of fish that you would actually put in that 10-gallon tank, they definitely enjoy being at school. Like if you just look in here, they're all swimming in kind of a group. They're hovering in the water. They're not even really sitting on the bottom, although some of them are. And so they're a social fish. So the minimum that I would keep would be about a group of 4. Although I would highly recommend you to get up into like 6 or 8, even as many as like 12 or 14. They love being in a group. They're very social fish, and they are super peaceful. So you can keep a lot in a small tank. So 10-gallon tank, at least 4, at the bare minimum 4. They want friends, so get them at least 4. Now, as far as what I would put in the tank, now these guys do prefer somewhat of an acidic water. What you could do is you could set it up as like a Caridina tank with a buffering substrate, you know, a bunch of botanicals, something more natural. If it was me and I wanted to keep it simple, what I would do is I would do a really fine sand because you don't want to scratch their bellies. So something that's a really soft sand, not going to scratch them up. And then I would do plants, a nice planted tank. I'd probably use tap water. I don't want to make things too complicated. 10-gallon tank, do, you know, my bi-weekly 10% water change. And these guys would just thrive for you. Most tap water is going to work for these. Across the United States, most tap water is 7.5 pH and everything is going to work out fine. These guys are hardy, in my opinion, after they've gone through our quarantine process. Now, if you were just going to get these anywhere, they're probably going to get a bad reputation for being pretty sensitive. I'm pretty confident in our livestock and how we quarantine it, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But I do think a 10-gallon tank, some sand, some plants, you know, maybe a little bit of fertilizer. These guys are going to be living their best lives 100%. So I want to swing by a different tank and just talk about, because again, we try to keep multiple tanks of these guys, and just talk about these guys are older, so they're getting towards that breeding age. Now, we don't do any breeding here. I personally have never bred these, so you can look up videos and specifics on breeding, what people do. All I know is, you know, visiting fish rooms, seeing how other people breed them and things like that. These guys are a little bit different than most Cories, is they don't do like huge clutches of eggs. Like some Cories you'll see, like they got like a huge clutch of eggs on the front. They just laid like 100 eggs, like it's crazy. These guys, my grandma used to breed, not this exact species, it was the Habrosis Cory, but she bred them in her 10-gallon tank. My grandma didn't do anything special. Literally nothing special. Shout out to you, Grandma Charlie, if you're watching this. But she didn't do anything special. She just kept a consistent tank. It was a seasoned tank, and they bred. She never pulled the eggs out or anything. So these guys love laying eggs in like Java fern, Java moss. The more moss you have, the better. Like floating plants with a lot of roots. These guys are gonna lay one egg at a time. One egg here, one egg there, one egg there. And then the babies are gonna hatch. If they see them, they may eat them. I don't think 100% they would, but it's a possibility. You know, they got a big enough mouth and they see something they can eat, they might try it. But my grandma never separated them from their tank, and she just had babies grow up in there, and the population just kept on growing. So they're not hard to breed. They're just something that if you really want to do it well, more surface area in your tank, more place for them to hide an egg, the more success you're going to have. So I just want to talk a little bit about kind of our quality control, our guarantee. So we mentioned earlier in the video, we quarantine everything for at least 14 days. That's how we do fish. Shrimp is a little bit different. We do 30 days. And so we have quarantine processes, but a lot of people ask, like, what do you do during that quarantine? What makes you guys different? So the one thing that you can always like rest assured with us, and this is like once you get to the other side of the spectrum, once you're buying, is we have a 100% live arrival guarantee. If your fish comes sick, if it comes unhealthy, if it looks deformed, anything like that, we're gonna honor our guarantee. Even if it didn't arrive dead, it just arrived unhealthy, we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna compensate you for that fish. And we are gonna guarantee that we're gonna get them to you alive and healthy. That is why we only ship fish overnight. It's very important to ship them overnight. You don't want them to be stuck in the bag very long. And that's how we keep the quality high from when it leaves here to it gets to you, is through overnight shipping. But let's talk a little bit about kind of what we do here. So when we get them in, there's a couple things we do. We look at, do they look like they have internal parasites? If they do, we have a specialty flake food, which is this stuff right here. This is a dewormer, so we feed them this. Now, a lot of times fish, when they come in, they're unhealthy. They're not gonna want to eat. So in that case, we use Paracleanse, and this is all stuff that you guys can buy. Obviously, you don't want to get a jar this big. This might be like $100 or $200. I don't know. But we Paracleanse them until they start looking healthy, and then we power feed them. The other things that we do, these are our two main medicines if something's like bacterial infection sick. Maricin 2, really good for getting them healthy. If you're trying to breed a fish, the last thing you want is them to just get hit with a ton of medicine, which is gonna make them infertile. We don't want that. So we don't overly medicate everything. We just look at it and decide, does this need A, does it need B, does it need C, or is it healthy? And so the other things that we have is we have a couple like specialty foods. We have a couple specialty medications. So this one is PP, which is potassium permanganate. We have a formulation of it. We mixed it, we added it to the tank. That's really good for like columnaris and things like that. We also use a mixture of like hydrogen peroxide. We got like our standard like quick cure, ICX, things like that. to treat ick if we do get that. And so during our 14 days, we're able to determine, is this fish gonna be healthy, is it not? If it's not gonna be healthy, there's been fish that we've held for like 3 months until they get healthy. We hate when that happens. 1, it's not good for the fish. 2, it sucks up a tank for literally 3 months. But that is our commitment to you guys. So you can always shop with us and know that you are getting a healthy fish every single time. But before I wrap up this section, it is always good to quarantine. Even if you get them from us, it's always good to have a quarantine tank and quarantine your fish outside of putting them into your main aquarium. What do you feed Pygmy Cories? That is a big question. Everyone's always wondering. One, they're a tiny little fish. They don't have big mouths, so you need to feed them food that they can actually eat. So this is exactly what we feed them. Now you're gonna look at this and be like, Rob, what actually is that? So this is a mix of a bunch of different foods. So one thing that we do here, we call it small food, right? What we do is we take a bunch of different North Fin foods that we like, we grind them up. Nano bits is a big one that we feed. We also feed a ton of flake food. So like North Fin has a bunch of different flake foods, cichlid, kelp, community, maybe veggie, I don't remember, but there's like 4 different types. We take all that, we mix it together, and then I'll take little pinches of that, put it in there, and they'll eat it off the bottom. They're pellets. Always get the small ones, so like the 0.5 millimeters is what these guys would eat. So nano bits, and I think veggie comes in that, maybe community. Maybe it's community and not veggie. But North Fin Foods is like the main staple food that we feed. And the other thing, if you come over here, now this freezer is like our main freezer that we use every day. So check out all the stickers. We feed them frozen food. Frozen food's really good. Daphnia, love it. It's not gonna bloat your fish. It's actually a really good laxative, for lack of better words. It's got high in fiber, things like that. So it's not gonna bloat them. Bloodworms are a little bit too big for them, so we don't really feed them bloodworms. But we do feed them baby brine, and I always call them cyclopods, but they're not. It's like copepods or something like that. Cyclops, that's what they are. Anyway, don't judge me based on this video, but we feed them also. I think maybe this is them. I know we have them upstairs in the freezer. They might be out down here, but we do feed them a lot of frozen food. As far as live foods, you could feed them like microworms and things like that. We don't do that. They're pretty much fed off this alone. So you don't have to get overly complicated. Just some frozen food, some of this, and I'm sure there's other types of food out there that you can feed them, but that's what we feed our Pygmy Cories. So as far as tank mates go, I said earlier, Pygmy Cories, not very aggressive. They're really small, so they do good with a lot of peaceful fish. But before we get into peaceful fish, check this out. This is their best friend. These are all Neocaridina shrimp. This is our Neocaridina pond room. This is where we keep them. We breed some, but not very many. And so really any Neocaridina shrimp would be good for Pygmy Cories, but they also would do good with Caridina shrimp. So let me show you our Caridina section. So this is our Caridina row. It's roughly about 120 gallon long. So we do a decent amount of Caridina shrimp. Because Pygmy Cories do like acidic water, they would do really well in a Caridina tank. Now, again, is there a chance that they're gonna eat a baby shrimp? Of course, there's a chance. But for the most part, they're gonna be shrimp compatible. We never say shrimp safe because truly there is no shrimp safe fish. There's just shrimp compatible fish, and these guys would be great. So another really cool tank mate for these guys would be dwarf gouramis. Dwarf gouramis, we haven't done a species profile or care guide on these yet, but we plan on. These guys are awesome. Now, these ones, they're not super colored up. They're actually not flame gourami, so ignore that one. These are just the standard dwarf gourami. Super pretty. Look up a picture of them. Maybe Em will overlay something for you guys. These guys are super peaceful. They're a little bit bigger, but a really good tank mate for some Pygmy Cories. Next one, obviously one of my favorite fish of all time. These are the celestial pearldanios, otherwise known as the Galaxy Rasbora, or CPD for short. They would do phenomenal with these guys. They would actually probably even school with these. Now, one that we didn't talk about today, but is a really good contender, is an Otocinclus as well, because they look very similar in their color, and they just school together throughout the tank. It's so cool. So these guys, we do have a whole detailed care guide on. If you guys want to check that out, link will be down below. But let's get into some frequently asked questions that we get from you viewers and some of our customers. So some frequently asked questions that we get. The number one question that we get is, do Pygmy Cories eat algae? Well, here we are, and you saw some other tanks. Obviously, they're not gonna eat surface algae. that doesn't mean that they're not gonna pick at like, you know, string algae or other types of algae, but as far as them being an actual algae eater, no, they for sure are not. They are a bottom dweller. They will eat things off the bottom. They're a scavenger. And so that's gonna help reduce algae, but they won't actually physically eat a lot of algae to at least make a difference. So I don't consider them an actual algae. Moving on down, another question that we get is, can Pygmy Cories and betta fish live together, or betta, however you want to say it? Can they live together? Absolutely, they can. It depends on the temperament of your betta. Now, I said a bunch in this video, these guys are super peaceful, not aggressive at all. If you get like a Mr. Grumpy betta, it's gonna just terrorize these guys. They're not gonna do well. They're small, so it's gonna pick on them. So you need to know the temperament of your betta to determine, is it gonna be safe or is it not? Other people ask, you know, are there other types of dwarf cories or dwarf Corydoras? Yes, so we have all these Pygmy Cories here. We actually have some tanks dedicated to other dwarf cories that we aren't able to get in. They're a lot more rare. And so the two main types are Pygmy Cories, which are like the salt and pepper cory. You can look those up. And there's another one, it's called Histatus or something, Corydoras Histatus. They're both really, really cool. And there's some other dwarf cories, but those are the three main ones that you can readily find in the aquarium hobby, although they're not as common as a Pygmy Cory. So we have access to get Pygmy Cories pretty much all year long. Pygmy Cories, we can maybe get, you know, 2 or 3 months out of the entire year. And then Histatus, I don't think I've ever really seen them. I mean, every once in a while they might pop up, but they're super expensive, hard to get. And so there are other types of dwarf cories, just not as readily available as Pygmy Cories. The last question that we get are Pygmy Cories safe with snails? So we didn't talk about snails being a good tank mate, although they would be a good tank mate. So the way Pygmy Cories are designed, they're not gonna bother your snails whatsoever. Again, I reserve the right to say that if they see a baby snail that is microscopic, they may eat it, although that is not gonna be their natural tendency. So you can't keep these with any types of snails. They're gonna do fine. Everything's gonna be okay. They will not eat your snails actively. So you can't keep them with that. And with that being said, I hope you guys learned a little bit in this video, a little bit more about Pygmy Cories, and even consider trying them out. And if you are in the market for some Pygmy Cories, consider checking out flipaquatics.com. We'd love to earn your business. You guys make it a great rest of your day. As always, God bless, and we'll catch you on the flip side.